Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the SERMAPod. This is the podcast for the Sports and Entertainment Risk Management Alliance. I'm the host of this podcast and also the founder and CEO of SERMA, Rich Lenkov. We are very honored today to have a very special guest discussing the trend of hazing in sports and some efforts to deal with that issue. Representative Buckner. Representative, welcome to the SERMAPod.
Hey, thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Representative Buckner is a Democrat here in Illinois representing the 26th district. And you are also a former football player. You played at the University of Illinois. So you have a very intimate knowledge of this subject matter. For those of our listeners who might not be following the most up-to-date information, of course, in the last couple of weeks, there's been revelations at Northwestern University, which is in the Big Ten. And both the men's baseball coach and the men's football coach, Pat Fitzgerald, have been terminated from their contracts in the wake of allegations of hazing, bullying. The hazing includes allegations of sexual abuse. There's some allegations of a racial component now that some of the alleged victims of the hazing have been identified. Yesterday, a bunch of them came forward. They hired a couple of lawyers. One very prominent attorney named Ben Crump is representing many of these student athletes. And among the allegations are that these students were forced to engage in sexual activities and other activities as part of an initiation ritual in the football team. So, Representative Buckner, this is, as we've discussed, an ongoing problem. We've seen and covered on this podcast lots of examples of hazing happening. First of all, from your experience, is this happening more frequently, or is there just more attention being paid to it and more victims are allowing their voices to be heard on the issue?
Well, it's hard to tell, Rich. I can't tell if these type of hazing rituals are happening at a higher clip, if it's happening in more places. But I think one good thing is that now we're talking about it on the highest platforms, and we've elevated the conversation in a real way. I'm reminded that there was a scandal just a few years ago in Wheaton, Illinois, at Wheaton College, where there were, I think, 4 players who may have had both criminal and civil liabilities tacked onto them. And so, listen, we know that in college athletics, this has been a part of the tradition for years. I dare say it had no place decades ago, and I think it absolutely has no place in a locker room today. As you said, what we heard at Northwestern amounted to more than just a hazing. It amounted to sexual assault in many cases. And so, I don't know if this is if more universities have taken this seriously, if more programs have taken this seriously, but I hope that the response to what we are hearing in Evanston is that more places will, so this does not become commonplace.
All right, well, I want to get to some of the efforts that you've undertaken to remedy this issue, but let's talk briefly about, what about college athletics makes hazing, still accepted in this day and age, right? I mean, we're very cognizant of the way we treat each other, especially young people as they're coming up through, the university and college process. Yet it still seems to be that this antiquated ritual of putting people through these drills and through these activities, which, in open society would never be tolerated, but apparently in the locker rooms are still widely accepted. What is it about athletics, having been in those locker rooms yourself at the highest level? You played in the Rose Bowl, you played at University of Illinois. What is it about those locker rooms that still makes this a breeding ground for this kind of activity?
I think first off, you got to start off with the base component. The base component is that this is part of the human condition, right? We are captured by the past, and we do things the way we've always done them because that's what we know how to do, right? And so many people couch that in traditionalism. Many people couch that in culture. But the truth of the matter is that college sports is no different than some things that you may see in certain fraternities or sororities, or certain things that you may see in some of these secret societies in college. You got a lot of young people with a lot of energy and vigor, and that is not always the best combination. But what also is true is that college football is about, college sports really is about camaraderie in many ways, right? It's about being able to be a part of a team, and many think that to be able to truly be a part of a team, that sometimes that requires a rite of passage of some sort, right? And so um, we have to have conversations about why it is unacceptable in these spaces. But I also want to say something, Rich. We've not spent a lot of time on this, talking about this in the public kind of domain and public discourse around the allegations at Northwestern, but the NCAA uh, has not taken hazing very seriously. You and I can sit down and we probably can rattle off names of prominent people who the NCAA has found a way to suspend, whether it's taking Reggie Bush's Heisman from him or suspending the Ohio State football guys for selling their own jersey. But you never hear about the NCAA suspending somebody for hazing because they have not taken it very seriously, right? And so while we look at these member organizations and institutions and the things that they are obligated to do, we also got to look at the parent organization here. The NCAA needs to do better as well.
So it's a great transition to talk about something that Ben Crump mentioned in his press conference and representing, I think, 15 or so men and women who have alleged that they have been victims of this hazing scandal. Former Northwestern quarterback Lloyd Yates said that the abusive culture was especially devastating for many players of color. And Ben Crump, representative, said that this was a civil rights issue for him, right? So talk to us about maybe some of the issues involving people of color when it comes to being involved in these hazing rituals. How does it affect them in particular?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. I read what Mr. Yates said, and I read what some of the other folks who are filing complaints and lodging allegations against the program said. And listen, if these things are true, there seems to have been a culture where many players of color did not feel comfortable in those spaces. You know, when a young person leaving high school looking for their college is being recruited, there are a lot of things they look at. And one thing for me in particular was looking for a program where I felt comfortable in my own skin, both literally and figuratively, right? And obviously, this seems to have been a reoccurring thing for many of the young men who played in Evanston. But this is all really just proof positive that many of the traditions and the cultural mores of college football are really from a bygone era, right? And so if we're looking at what the next steps look like, how you move forward, we got to have the conversations about race. We got to have the conversations about protection and safety, and also recourse for people who may have either endured or witnessed these type of things happening in their own programs.
All right. So you said, Representative, that college athletes needs a Bill of Rights. Talk to us about that and what you're trying to accomplish in some of your efforts on this issue.
Yeah, even before the Northwestern scandal broke, I had been working on a college athletes Bill of Rights specifically because of the work that we had done here in Illinois around name, image, and likeness, giving autonomy to college athletes. And the pivot that the NCAA has made in the last couple of months, basically saying that they're not going to honor the state laws on those things because they feel like, this is the Wild Wild West now in NIL territory. And so I have begun to do some work to try to protect the work that we have already done, to also create some parameters for economic benefits and educational benefits and degree attainment, gender equity for Title IX sports, and to also have some health benefits, right? So like having a college create a trust fund for student athletes that they can use for health-related expenses up to 5 years after they played their last down or the last second has ticked off the clock for them. But right before I was getting ready to file that, the scandal broke. And as I looked at my, what I think is a special obligation as a former student athlete and now a legislator, I thought that I couldn't just protect student athletes through educational means and economic means and gender equity means, but it had to be able to protect the entire student athlete and their entire experience, which would include finding a way for us to stop hazing at the college athletics level. And if it does happen, having some recourse for these young women and men to actually tell somebody without fear of retribution and retaliation.
How strong do you think that feeling of fear of retribution is now, right? I mean, we could sit here all day and say that this shouldn't exist, but when you get into that locker room, it's very much an old school peer pressure environment. And even these, seemingly gigantic, football players, basketball players, they feel the same pressures that everyone else does in that situation and don't feel comfortable speaking up, perhaps, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And what I've been letting folks know is that, listen, I can be extremely honest about this. I did not, endure anything like this. I never witnessed anything like this. But had I cannot tell you that at 19 years old or 18 years old or even at 20 years old, that I would have been willing to step forward to say, listen, this is wrong. I probably would have fought in the locker room about it, but that would have been the extent of it. I wouldn't have gone to see somebody who had some authority and some accountability to talk about it. Because at the end of the day, every morning that I woke up as a final line, I woke up thankful for the opportunity to go to college for free. And also thankful for that experience, but also knowing that my parents could not afford to send me to the University of Illinois. And so the power dynamic there, that scholarship was so important to me that I wasn't willing to give it up. And so I would imagine that folks in that position are scared of that type of retaliation, and therefore they remain silent.
Representative, how has your work on this issue been received by your colleagues in the legislature? I know Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has been vocal, especially in the last couple of weeks, about the need to remedy this issue. But how has it been received? And also, has the NCAA had taken a position on some of what you're talking about?
Yeah, my colleagues from around the state, in the Chicago region and south of I-80, I've had a number of conversations with folks, and they are extremely excited about this, and they think this is important work, both Republicans and Democrats. This is going to be a bipartisan effort, which is fantastic. We don't get to do that a lot in Springfield, but this is going to be something that's going to bring folks together. And hopefully, I've had other conversations with legislators from around the country who are looking at what we're going to do, and they're going to hopefully use it as a blueprint to what they do next. And also, there is some attention being paid to this because the federal government, the U.S. Senate, has been working on something similar for a while. Senator Cory Booker being the lead on that, and Cory is a friend, but also a former student athlete playing tight end and offensive tackle at Stanford back in the day. And hopefully what we're able to do in Illinois can inform Congress as well on how they act in this space. But once again, the NCAA has been silent. They've not said much. They've not done much, which is par for the course for that organization.
So, Representative Buckner, how does this issue dealing with the elimination of hazing in college sports deal or relate to the overall work you've done in giving student athletes more of a voice overall, including the NIL work that you've done?
When I think about anti-hazing laws, when I think about NIL, when I think about economic benefits and educational benefits like degree attainment for student athletes, it's really about giving them autonomy. It's about fairness, and it's about protection. Right? These are human beings who are the engine of a billion-dollar industry, and without these people, the TV contracts don't happen, and the merchandising contracts don't happen. And unfortunately, we've often just looked at them as commodities and not as human beings. And so part of what I've tried to do in the space that I occupy now is to give them that protection, and we'll continue to work on that. The Student Athletes Bill of Rights will be a step in the right direction to do that for all student athletes in the state of Illinois.
Illinois 26th District Representative Cam Buckner, thank you so much for joining us on the SERMAPod. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich. Have a good one.